Well, hello, good people. Part 9 of Haven't You Finished That Damn Pietenpol Ford Yet? And as you can see, I have actually made some progress since the last part. For my neighbour's benefit, I chopped out this tin cover outside. Top tip for you chaps, when you're cutting out sheet steel, particularly larger sections like that, or any size you want, screw it to a piece of MDF. There's a couple of screw holes in this here, which correspond with these two little spare holes here. It meant I could cut with a disc cutter pretty close to the edge, and then it was very easy to clean up with tin snips and a file. Didn't take too long. I also worked out where I wanted to stick the holes into the flange that I brazed into the bottom of the sump, and in an act of appallingness, I actually found some M6 bolts. I've got a great bag of these from something that needed M6 bolts, so I've had to cut them down. These two have already been done. I couldn't tap these ones. They're drilled 5mm and the cover is drilled 6mm clearance, but the dipper pan is in the way. I don't want to get swarf in there any more than I need to, but of course it's all got to come apart. But it'll be easier to do once this is off. I can do it with the sump off and everything. The plan today is to get the lip seal housing made and screwed on with some 4BA screws. I'm running perilously low on 4BA screws from the Ministry of Defence. I know it's been 34 years, but they really should have given me more. And by the end of this part, if you're still awake, hopefully the oil system will be all together, with oil in it, crank handle on, flywheel on, engine in a stand. We can wind the handle and actually see the oil come up into the chest, and maybe make the Pietenpol pipe as well, so the oil goes into the main bearings. Exciting stuff. The black line on here is just where I drew round the seal, like so I could bore with alacrity, which is probably what I'm doing to you good people as well. Anyway, let's see how we're going. Not far off. It's 2 1/4, so that'd be 2.25. It might be a little bit over anyway. They're quite rubbery, these seals. Yeah, 5.9. So there's probably 1/10 of oversize. Of course, and there's glue as well. Still says we're a tiny bit off. 22.48, 2.49. Yeah, not far off at all. I think just probably running the tool through once or twice again will be enough to, yeah, that's just about pushing in. I'm just going to clean that up with the tool once more through it, and that will go in, because I can squeeze it in carefully, probably in the vise or similar with packing behind. I've pushed the seal part way into the flange, so the idea now is to slide that on like so, and then take the pulley and where does the pulley go? There we are, like so. I don't know how highbrow I need to be. When I did the dual ignition to single ignition engine for the Ronca C2, then I think I just lined it up using a pen, and I think I'll do the same now. It seems to sit quite nicely on the bit that I flattened, this bit that's sort of dimpled on the case. So can't see that this shouldn't work. What I can do as well is just mark sort of the top of the flange, so I actually put it on. I know it should be as rounder than a round thing, but if it goes like that, then I reckon that's all right. So if I pull all this off and then drill the steelwork from the back. Now I had a little dig around. Look, I said I was running low. They're my last 6 4BA screws from 43 District Workshop, Remy, Aldershot, 1990. I don't know why I'm being so sentimental really. They're available from Namric for a few pounds, but nonetheless, those are the last ones from the Ministry of Defence. If you're still awake, you will have got the gist that I'm just drilling these one at a time and tapping them and making sure this stays concentric. Well, it is very concentric. I've just tried it on the engine with the seal, just pressed in a little way again, and it's all fine. So I'm not going to worry about whether it's in the right place, because it is now. And drill the rest of it, tap it, and put the sealant on. I'll show you again once it's done. Well, that's the housing fitted once and for all. I cut the screws down and peened the heads over so they can't come undone. It's all stuck on with red gunjo. Put the seal in a little way. I don't want to push it in too far. It was a bit of a pig to get out earlier. Just to show, goes in very nicely. Line it up onto the keyway. There we are. So that sort of job done really. Pull it out again. We're going to take this off now, paint it. I'll take the seal out whilst I paint it and then push it in once and for all, and carry on taking the rest of it apart. It's the last time it comes apart. When it goes back together next time, it's for good. You might recall I had to give a bit of percussive persuasion to the dam that I welded onto the back of the dipper pan here, because it was just hitting the rear crank web. Unfortunately, it's still hitting, only by a gnat's crotchet, but I'm actually going to heat it up with the oxyacetylene and wallop it with a hammer, because it needs to move in probably another 1/16 of an inch or something. I can bolt the sump on, but when I turn the crank, I can just hear a scraping sound, and there's a witness line here, so it's obviously hitting, albeit only very gently. That's bottom dead center. That's when it used to scrape. No, no scraping sound anymore. So that's excellent. I marked out the gaskets so I can cut them out and bash the holes whilst the paint's drying. But I had a bit of a paint disaster. I painted this black with some funny black, well, it said multi-surface, and it was wash the brushes with water afterwards. I should have blanched at that really. Anyway, it was a disaster, so it's all been washed off. It washed off with water, and I scrubbed it again with a Scotch-Brite pad and some fairy liquid, and flushed it off and stuck it on top of the Arga for an hour, so it's nice and dry. It's fairly warm too. So the sump was going to be black. It's now going to be grey, the same as the block, with this fabulous paint which has got a lovely smell of lots of solvent, so it's probably much better. Well, that looks a damn sight better. I don't know why I didn't use that paint in the first place. It goes on beautifully. It's a Rust-Oleum product. I think Rust-Oleum paints are generally very good. Well, whilst that's drying, I'll chop out some gaskets, and then we'll have a look at this pipework inside the block. The pipework consists of a copper pipe pushed into the oil outlet, which is then bent round, attached to a T-piece, and feeds down to the centre main bearing, and then to the rear main bearing. It all looks quite simple. However, The Pietenpol drawings, delightful though they are rather simplified. The valve gear is missing and this spring isn't shown. The spring holds the drive down in here. This drive has a gear on it and drives down to the oil pump and up to the distributor, and it's held in with this big spring. The 1/4 inch compression fitting is very easy to get. They're a standard gas fitting, so that's got to sit about there, and I've annealed a length of pipe. I've annealed this part of it so I can bend it into a semicircle to go into the oil outlet there. Right, this should bend very easily without collapsing, so it might need annealing twice because it will work harden fairly quickly. See if that'll go into the... Yes, it will. It doesn't need to go all the way to the back there either, so that's quite nice because it gives enough room to get it into the oil feed some distance, like so. So go a little further into the oil feed, like that, and then around, well, you can see that it's in quite a long way. I can cut it off and it won't be able to go back that way too much because of the T-piece and the other pipes going down to the centre bearing and the rear main. But I think that's fairly good there. But can I get it out again? Yes. So with the T-piece, well, about there, doesn't need to be exact. How far? I took the olives out earlier, they're in their little bag elsewhere. So I bring that in and see the pipe goes in about 1/4 inch into the fitting, then with the olive on. So, well, anywhere around here, I suppose. Mark it and cut the pipe. Somewhere around there. That'll do nicely. Well, wasn't that artistic? I haven't actually put the olive on, that's just slid on for effect, just to see how it looks. I'm going to take this out of the way again and anneal another length of pipe. Go in here. It's quite a short length. This is the offcut, top tip here, chaps. I put it on a piece of 16th welding wire. I can anneal the whole lot and drop it in a bucket of water without having to get my hands anywhere near it. So I'm not really into safety, but I don't like being burnt. I've just moved you in. I can't really show you where the hole is for the bearing, but it's about here. And just measuring to see how deep it is. You can judge on my hand. That's the bottom of the hole. I'll move my hand up until the wire comes, well, it's probably a couple of inches in. It's just come out now, so yes, at least, probably, yeah, 2.5 inches maybe. The pipe doesn't need to go all the way to the bottom, so I've put a little bit of a bend in it anyway, and it can be pushed in, and if it's down in there an inch, that's sort of more than enough. There we are, that's in well over an inch. So I need to bend it now to come down and then up to the fitting. It's all reasonably close. Of course I can angle that, well, that would be better, wouldn't it? I can do a lot less of a bend if I angle the fitting back. Well, that was clever. You're very one to have bright ideas. So let's do that. I need to put an S bend in it so it goes into that bottom of the T. Right, that pipe is in there. This one, I actually sort of end up moving that way slightly, so it's a bit more loose in the gallery at the far end. So I'm just going to shorten it by about 1/4 inch. I reckon that'll do it nicely. And then the last pipe just comes this away. So I think I'm going to put the olive on this one now because I'm very happy with that. I don't want it moving at all. It's not going anywhere different. I'll just take this out and do it in the vise. I fitted the olives to both pipes now, so 2 are done complete. The third one needs to go to feed the rear main bearing. Now I'm just trying to light up the There we are, you can see it. I'll poke the wire, you can just see the hole about there. I'm going to move you out of the way. It's just a 90-degree bend in the pipe. There we are, I've got the piece of welding wire down the hole. And so what I can do actually, I'll just put the torch down. Use this piece of wire just to work out pretty much how long I want the last piece of pipe. That's all the way down and in, which of course is not what I want. It's going to be somewhere about there. I'll clip this off. There we go. So somewhere about there, and well, again, it's miles deep, that hole, so I think I can take about 1.5 inches off the end of the wire, and that's how long I want the copper pipe to be. The bottom will need annealing because a really funny dog leg around the back of that first cam follower boss. Once it's in away, it's all right. Good. Well, it's a bit hopeless trying to film with an iPad and bend pipes and all manner of other things, so I just sort of slightly pressed on there. But you can see where the pipe goes into the block now, forward of that cam follower, and it's in properly, and I can fit the last olive and put the last nut on. That pipe works complete. I've just sorted out this bend. It was a little high here and it was a bit sharp there, so I just took the pipe off and sorted it out a little bit. I've also put a piece of hard plastic pipe over there so the spring doesn't chew its way through the copper pipe. I'll have to monitor that. I could always put a piece of metal pipe, maybe copper pipe, over the plastic if necessary. Probably good enough for now. Something does intrigue me, and that's how much oil will actually come out around the outside of the pipe, which is a reasonably loose fit, and how much actually goes along the pipe and to the bearings. I found a Canadian document that said the oil flow from the pump was something over 1 gallon, that's one funny little US gallon, or 4 litres if you're a Napoleonic type, at 1300 RPM. So when the Pietenpol is running at about 1800 RPM, which is pretty much what Bernard reckoned the engine ran at with the big propeller on it, that was about 1.5 gallons a minute. I guess there's quite a lot of sort of dynamic flow, enough to push the oil around the pipe and then down, particularly once the oil warms up a bit. I'd like to put the sump on now and see if we can put a hand crank on it, at least get oil coming out of here, and hopefully if I can wind the thing fast enough without giving myself a heart attack, then maybe we can get the oil to come up the pipe here, and if I take that off, we'll get the oil dripping out and back into the valve chest. Got to be worth a try. The potential big gotcha with this engine is to put the sump on and forget to clip the dipper pan in place. Before I clip the dipper pan in place though, I'm just going to add some magnets along the bottom of the baffles. Now you'll have to indulge my lunatic streak, but when I rebuilt the Vauxhall engine many years ago, I used a chunk of this gauze around the oil pump, which is in the back of the sump, driven by a plunger off the camshaft. And on the outside of the gauze there is an enormous bar magnet, much bigger than this one, stuck on. Now when I first sorted the engine out, and sorted out is a euphemism for bodged up terribly, it had very worn and rusted bores and all manner of things, which the three-legged Honer sorted out, along with Mr. Daintree's Ridge Dodger piston rings. When I first ran it, this magnet picked an awful lot of magnetic fluff up. You know, it was like obviously cylinder bore material and the rings running in, but it was great that the magnet picked it up because it meant it didn't circulate in the oil system. Really fine ferrous particles. So I have a bit of a liking for magnets inside sumps. So it's easier in this engine to put the magnets on the baffles. So I'm just going to put one there on that side because the oil pump sits here, and one there. I never need to look at them again. They'll just pick up tiny particles. They'll be stuck on forever, And, well, who cares less? If they do nothing, they do no harm. If they do something, they do quite a lot of good. The other thing to consider, of course, is that the magnets work even when the engine's not running. So if the thing's sitting around for several years on end, they're still attracting anything that was floating around in the oil. That was the French explanation of magnetism. Anyway, I'm just going to dollop some red Hylamar on here. I've cut gaskets out. I don't usually put stuff on gaskets, but this is terribly close to the water line and I don't want a leak, so... And I've got to hold the gaskets on while I stick the sump on, so they might as well be stuck on with a bit of red gunjo. I think the Ford gaskets are cork, but I've used Mr. Flexoid's paper as usual. I really like the stuff. I think it'll stick well with this. There's a cork that goes around the rear of the sump here, and it has to be cut to 6 11/16 of an inch, which it has been. It's also been steamed in a marmalade jar for a while, so it took on a bit of a bend. And soak them, as I'm told, and put them in a fruit can or something, but I found a marmalade jar was perfect. We'll compress in the edge of the sump, pushes right into the cork there. So that should be about it. I can go and get the sump itself. I've spared you the agony of watching me tighten all those bolts up. Unfortunately, one of them broke. One here has broken. I was just doing them up with a ring spanner, not a particularly long ring spanner, just making sure they're all the same, and it broke, which is a real nuisance. However, well, there's two things I can do. I can take it all apart again, get an easy out, which I don't have, drill it and all the rest of it, and have to clean everything off again. Or I can look at the gasket and decide that the stuff has squidged out nicely, which it has all the way along, and that it's sealed up anyway, and if it's one bolt down, I don't think it's going to make any difference. So, being lazy, that's what I'm doing. The oil pump can go in now. I have had it apart. It's just got 2 gears, one on the shaft here and an idler next to it. Sorry, I should have done the camera on. I did it about 6 months ago. It's got some nice sticky oil in it. It drives on that spade drive there, which lines up. I can see the spade drive, it's vertical, so I've made this vertical and I should be able to put it straight in. That's it. It's only the 1928 pattern sumps that have this extra plate. Most of them, one has to put the oil pump in, and it can be held with a fitting through. There's a drilling there. One can make a special tool to hold the pump in place. And then there's a spring inside the sump that sits against this. But on these 28 pattern sumps, they have this extra ring of bolts. So this is the plate that goes on there, complete with the sump plug and the spring to hold the pump up against the drive. I've already made a gasket. I'm going to put a bit of gunjo on it though, as it's properly below the water line. Unfortunately, I thought I'd press the record button. I hadn't, so you missed that, but it's just me putting 6 bolts in and tightening them up. There's a bit of spring pressure to go against, that spring on the end of the plate here that pushes against the pump, but not very much. The last thing is the drain plug. I annealed a new washer for it, and I've just put a bit of red stuff on the thread. It's all nice and clean and dry, so that should stay nice and leak free. I've wrestled the engine upright, and I was thinking about sticking the oil tube in. But before I do, actually, I'm going to shine a torch down through here, and we'll try and look at an oil dipper on the end of the connecting rod, and see how far it goes into the dipper pan. You never see this on a David Attenborough programme. Just to the right of the nut there is the dipper, and it goes into the dipper pan about halfway. The nuts and the ends of the big end bolts and the split pins are clear of the oil level. Of course, if they did hit the oil level, there'd just be oil going everywhere, and the dipper wouldn't get a clean run at the oil in the pan. I've pushed the lip seal into the housing, so it's time to get this end cover on. Well, having consumed a glass or two of Chateau Colostomy last night, I was feeling rather brave. I came outside and emptied the contents of this into the sump and gave it a good wind. I haven't got a crank handle yet. I'm making the crank handle at the moment, but it's not finished. It can be used on the engine stand. So a large socket and a Tommy bar will do. Anyway, I'm just going to move the camera around and see if we can see the oil coming out of the gallery. If you appear to be wobbling around a bit, it's not you, it's the engine standing on its sump. It's still attached to the crane, so it doesn't fall over. Right, I'm going to start winding now. There are. You can see oils coming out of the gallery here. Now the question is any of it going up the pipe? Well, that was rather good. I was doubting whether there'd be enough pressure when hand cranking to get the oil up and round, but there is. I'll connect that pipework up, but I'm not going to put the side cover on yet, this piece, until the distributor drive is all done. There's still a question as to how much oil is actually going to gather in the valve chest. Now some of it's being pumped straight to the main bearings. With that in mind, when I do put the cover on eventually, I'm going to use a piece of clear plastic pipe from here down to the sump. The point being, we can see if the flow from here is enough with what just comes out the side of the pipe and anything else to raise the level in the chest enough to actually have the oil running down to the dipper pan. If it isn't, then I can always adjust the height of the overflow on the side cover. Anyway, all exciting stuff. I'm going to carry on. There's a head gasket to make and I need to finish the engine stand, but I think that's probably enough nonsense for now. Thank you for watching. See you again soon.